Everyone, and welcome to a new video. So today's video is going to be all about making a bonnet, and it's been a long time since I made a bonnet. I think my last one was in October 2016, so I'm thoroughly out of practice when it comes to bonnet making, but I want to get back into it because bonnets are a wonderful accoutrement. That's the wrong word, isn't it? Are a wonderful, somewhat ridiculous companion to a whole variety of dresses that were worn for a bunch of different periods. And I definitely want more of them in my wardrobe, and I definitely want to make more of them because I enjoy the process so much. And today I have an excuse to make one because I recently finished a late 1830s dress, and it definitely needs a matching headpiece. So I thought I could show you my headpiece making process from start to finish today. I'm hoping that this one won't be very difficult. I'm going to be using a straw hat that I alter as a base as opposed to making it from scratch from interfacing, which should make the process a little bit more easy and hopefully mean that I can get it done tonight. But there is still going to be some handwork when it comes to stitching in the lining and figuring out the trimming, and I thought it'd be fun to include all of that in today's exclusive Patreon only video. If you haven't already seen my videos about the project that I'm making this bonnet to go with, then I will link them on screen. It's a red dress with little dots on it and a gathered bodice. I'm really fond of it, and I'm really excited to make something for my head that goes with the dress. Yeah, that makes sense. So let me show you my inspiration as well as all of the materials that I have to work with. So this was my inspiration, and it was really difficult for me to find a bonnet for the 1830s, which had this more, I was going to say subtle. It's not quite a subtle shape, but not the really ridiculous, crazy shape that was so common in the 1830s. In case you don't know, the 1830s were kind of known for the ridiculous hairstyles and ridiculous hats. I'll try and link a few fashion plates in the description box that explain what I mean. But that is from the earlier and the mid-1830s, whereas the dresses I made and I'm trying to pair a bonnet with are from the latter half of the 1830s, if not the early 1840s. So that style doesn't really suit them as well, or at least it doesn't suit them as well in my opinion. So I was looking for something that was more toned down, and I just couldn't find what I wanted until I came across this. And I really like the softer shape of this. I feel like it will suit the casual day dress that I have already finished really well. And it also provides me with ample room for trims because I really want to put some fake flowers and leaves around the interior and exterior of the brim. So this is going to be my inspiration. I don't know if I'm going to be able to create such a nice domed effect with the straw that I personally have, because this would have been hand sewn into that shape and probably steamed into that shape, whereas I'm just using really cheap wide straw that I got from Michael's. But I'm going to try and come up with something similar, and hopefully I can come up with something I'm happy with. So over here I have the hats, which I purchased from Michael's. I've got one that I've already kind of taken apart for a different headpiece, which I'm going to try and use up for this one, and then I have another hat if I end up needing more than the straw this one provides. Over here I have the dress that this bonnet will go with. So if you forgot what it looks like, that's it. Hopefully now you can see what I mean about it not suiting the typical 1830s style bonnets. I just feel like those are a little bit too ridiculous and fussy for this style of dress. And I'm pairing the other dress that I made, the floral one, with a lace cap. So I don't need to make a more elaborate headpiece for that. This is the only one that needs a bonnet or any sort of hard-shelled headpiece. So I've got the straw, but I was looking for something in my stash to line the straw with, and the only fabrics I have that kind of complement the colors in this is this orangey material that I purchased in Lancaster a few years ago, and then this green one, which I purchased at the same time. And I don't like either of these for this project because I think they're going to fight for attention with the green velvet leaves and paper flowers that I want to use around the brim of the bonnet. So then I looked more closely at the bonnet inspiration photos, and I realized the bonnet was just lined with a fabric that matched the straw. So my current bonnet lining contenders is this very, very fine cotton, which I'm using for McCall's project but have some left over. So I could use this to line it, or I could use this to line it. This is a silk shantung that I purchased from Hamad's Fabrics. I purchased 5 yards for an 18th century costume, but then he gave me 3 yards for free because that was left on the bolt, and they're nice to me there. So I really like how this is in the same kind of warm color range, and I thought this would look nice as lining as well, but I'm not sure which is better. So I'm probably going to figure that out later once I actually have the bonnet brim cut out, but that's where I am right now in terms of the thought process. And I don't have the paper flowers out just yet, but here are some flowers just from Michael's that I purchased, which I would like to use on it as well. So hopefully I can put all of this stuff together and end up with a beautiful bonnet that suits this project perfectly. So I'm going to do some brainstorming and play around a little bit with the straw, and I will definitely show you what I come up with once I come up with something. So here is the brim, and I figured this out just by holding the hat up to my shape and contorting it and then using a Sharpie to kind of mark roughly where I want things to be. And then I cut about 2 inches away from that line just because I realized that isn't a very technical method and would probably be slightly off. And then I kept testing and moving the lines inward until I had a shape that I was happy with. So this is going to be the brim for it, and then this is going to be the top of it. So I stole this from the other complete hat, which is clearly no longer complete. This is going to form the back of the bonnet. However, I have to add some more straw here since it needs to be kind of longer in that area than is at the back. I'm just going to keep fiddling with it and hopefully I will come up with something that I like. This is definitely going to be a little bit more dramatic than the bonnet I was originally inspired by, but I think I'm still going to come out with something that I'm really happy with. So my hot glue gun is heating up and I'm going to use that to attach the straw because I find it does a really good job. But I'll be doing the lining and all the detail work by hand later on. So the brim still looks the same, but I finalized the design of it. So I'm going to sew wire into the edges by hand. I'm just going to try whip stitching it to the lining and then hopefully, or not whip stitching it to the lining, whip stitching it to the interior, and then hopefully the lining will cover it. I'm a little bit worried about sewing wire into this because the straw breaks so easily, but hopefully I can make my stitches large enough that they won't put too much tension on the straw, but they will still provide enough support to keep the wire positioned properly. So wish me luck on that. I also finished building out the top of this, so it's very uneven, but it does work really nicely. And I'm going to reinforce all of this glue with stitching because I don't think the glue did a very thorough job. Also, when pinning these pieces together and doing the test fitting, I made sure to mark on the interior where this line should be because it goes in further at some points and sits farther away from the edge at others. So that's what I'm currently working with, and I will definitely update you guys when this comes along a little bit more. So it kind of killed my fingers and I didn't even do that great of a job, but I've gotten 2 bands of wire sewn into the brim of the bonnet. So that is what it looks like from the outside, and then that is what it looks like from the inside. And now I'm going to go ahead and cover up all of the wire, the lining fabric, and I decided to use the shunting lining, which is the orangey one over there. I also realized that I didn't bind these edges and there's actually Sharpie markings on the front of them. So I think I'm going to have to end up trimming the exterior edge with lace or something, but I don't feel like this is a project that really suits lace. So I'm not sure what my game plan is there, but yeah, I want to cover up this edge somehow because it catches on things. That was really the problem with this. Not only did it kill my fingers because the straw is so thick, the thread caught on every little piece of straw that sticks out and it was torturous to do. But it's done and hopefully sewing in the lining will be a little bit smoother. So I got the lining stitched into the brim, and that was a lot easier than I thought it would be. It's much easier stitching through the straw when you're not putting a lot of tension on the straw. So with this, I can just sew through the top layer of the straw without it cracking, whereas for the wire, I was sewing through more layers, and it was more difficult and just didn't go as well. But now the brim is pretty much done, so I cut out the lining, which is just a 7-inch by 25-inch rectangle, and this is going to be the lining for the cap portion of the bonnet. So I'm going to stitch that in there by hand, and then I'm going to stitch these 2 pieces together, and then the bonnet will be well on its way to being complete, and I can trim it tomorrow and make the ribbons for it and everything like that. So it's currently 10:15 p.m. So I'm gonna keep myself busy with that, and hopefully I can return tomorrow morning and show you guys the somewhat finished base and also take you through the entire trimming process because that's the part that I'm looking forward to the most. So it is the next morning and this is the current state of the bonnet. So I got the pieces stitched together last night. Unfortunately, I couldn't reinforce where I glued with stitching because it was impossible to sew through sections that had been glued. The glue kind of fused the straw into this weird texture that I couldn't stitch through without the needle getting really gummed up and also going through my finger because there was so much pressure being put on the needle. So it's not as durable as I wanted it to be, but I think it's pretty good. And I also got the lining stitched into both the cap portion as well as the brim. And then I made this little band out of a matching orange fabric. So these are rectangular strips I folded in half and then sewed with the right sides facing each other. And one's turned outward, they look like this. So I sewed the 2 strips together and then I stitched that to the center and used it to cover the join point on the interior between the cap and the bonnet. And I realize this part doesn't look very good, but I'm going to cover it with flowers and things so it shouldn't matter. So now the only thing left to do is to add some of my trims and flowers and then it will be ready to be worn. Oh, I also had this edge which was cut and I wasn't sure how to finish the straw. So I ended up using hot glue to secure the interior of the straw just to kind of fuse it back together and make it less scratchy because the raw straw is very prone to catching on things. And then I covered the exterior with a scrap of straw. So it doesn't look perfect, but definitely looks a lot better. And I can cover this point with some of the flowers. So I will report back once this is all flowered up, and then this thing will be done. The bonnet is done. So I had to add a little bit more glue this morning because it started coming apart here. I'm really not happy with how the glue has secured the straw, but it's just so thick and prone to breaking that I really can't stitch through it by machine. So that's frustrating. And I'm kind of frustrated with this project as a whole because the construction is really sloppy and it actually took me a decent amount of time to do. Like, I could have constructed a bonnet out of interfacing in a similar amount of time because the wire was so difficult to sew on. And I feel like my interfacing bonnets are a lot better made and a lot better looking up close. And the interior of this is just a mess since I can't stitch through the straw. So it's just been really a frustrating little project. It still didn't take me that long, like it probably took a couple hours altogether, and I do like how the shape turned out and how the trim turned out. I added a bunch of smaller flowers as well as some of those velvet millinery leaves, and I think it's pretty. It's just a lot of work for something that's quite poorly made in the end, and it's poorly made just based off of the materials and how I can work with the materials. Not thrilled with it as a whole, but I do like it and I think it will complement the costume well. I was originally going to cover this with something because, as I said, it looks quite sloppy, but it actually doesn't show when it's on my head. And the thing I was going to cover it with were either fake flowers or some lace, and I actually went as far as to gather the lace, but I don't like how it looks and how the color of it distracts from the warmer tones in this. So I think I'm going to leave the lace off, at least for now, but I might put this with the accessories for this costume when I'm packing it away, and then I can always add it at a later date. So yeah, that is my bonnet. It's done, and now this project as a whole is done, and I'm really excited to photograph it in a couple of days. So keep an eye out on my blog for those photos, and I'll probably post some of the photos on Patreon too. And I really hope you enjoyed this video, and I really appreciate the ongoing support. And I'll talk to all of you very soon. I just realized I kind of forgot to show you what the bonnet looks like on. So I don't have any makeup on right now, and I still need to even out the wire because obviously it's not as nicely shaped on the top as it should be. But that's it from the front without being fully shaped. And that is it from the side. So it's definitely different than the bonnet that I originally based it on. It's a lot larger, and that was mostly dictated by the size of this cap piece. But I do like it, and I think it's cute, and I think it's a nice shape, and it does flatter my face somewhat, though I definitely need to see it with styled hair to get the full impression. And then this is what the lace cap looks like with unstyled hair. So from the front, it's really pretty subtle looking, especially when I have more volume at the front, which I will style my hair to have when I'm taking the actual photos. And then from the side, it looks like that. So I think it lays over the hair really nicely and it ends at a really flattering point. I'm definitely impressed with this for my first adventure in cap making. And I realized I didn't cover the process of making this cap in this video. It was from a previous video, which I will link on screen, up there-ish or there-ish. I always seem to forget or get it wrong, but I just wanted to show it to you in this video since I forgot to show it off in that one. So that's where I am with this, and that's the end of this video.